and this is something you've been open about in prior episodes, and I think you'll feel comfortable answering. But what has been the biggest challenge and the biggest blessing of being a single father?
Well, biggest challenge, just purely from a logistic standpoint, is when there's only one of you. Everything's on you, man. Right? When you're trying to run a company with 75 people, stay in shape, have some downtime for yourself, which is pretty much impossible at this point. There's no cavalry coming to rescue you. Now, I'm very lucky. My parents live here. I have my brother lives here. It's not like I'm running completely solo. I have a great support system. But that's only so often, right? When you get home from work and you're totally smoked. And so I go straight from here to get her at daycare. So I get like 20 minutes in the car to kind of like unwind. And, sometimes our days are stressful, right? We're dealing with problems and this and that. But sometimes I schedule calls at 5 when I'm driving, so I can just knock out. It's like 25 more minutes. I can be productive, right? I'm trying to max out my day. So then I'll, hang up the phone. I'll pick her up like as I'm in the parking lot, and I go straight home. And now it's dad mode until 9:30 at night. And now I usually just fall asleep with her because it's not even worth it to, you know what I mean? So when you look at my day, it's like from, I get up around 6. Sometimes she'll wake up around 7. That's usually the only quiet time that you get at all. So I guess it's challenging, and any parent, not even just the single parents, know the challenge I'm talking about, but particularly the single ones that are doing it by themselves. You can feel a little bit overwhelmed and almost like if you're not careful, you can feel a little bit like, I don't want to say resentment, but like, man, like, am I ever going to get a moment to myself where I can just, you have this little human dependent on you? But I'll flip it over now, because that's, the more negative side. It has forced me to be all in as a dad because there's no other choice. And that has completely changed who I am and what my priorities are. And it's crystal clear to me now what the priorities in my life are. And it's super refreshing to have that clarity. And as you know, like before you're a parent, you have no idea the joy that it can bring. And just it's crazy. It's like every day you're just grateful. So when I put her, she just sleeps with me. So when we go to bed every night, she's laying there and she has to she's attached to me like all night. I'm just laying there staring at this ceiling like, man, how lucky am I to have this? Like, this is something I knew nothing about a few years ago. And now I'm like, so it's hard. It's exhausting. It's stressful at times. Your old life is fucking gone. You know that. There's little glimmers of it every now and then. If you take a quick work trip, you know what I mean? And you can get dinner and you're not like, we connect with some old friends. You kind of feel normal for a 2-hour window. But then you're back in it. So I think it's made me grow up a little bit, and it just has changed my priorities. And like I said, not to weave it back to the last question, but my outlook on what is my role in society now is different, because now it's like, all right, it's kind of on me to make sure that she is set up for the rest of her life, right? So when on a personal level, I need to teach her those values, but what is she going to inherit, right? Not just financially, but I'm talking more like, what world is she going to grow up in? So that's why I think it kind of kicked me in the ass to say, all right, hey man, you've been a leader your whole life. You know what I mean? You've always been the captain of the football team and this and that. You've gravitated towards that. You're leading a company. Why on the most important topic, that of your whole life, are you all of a sudden sitting in the back seat and letting everyone else run the show, right? And I think that's part of why you might sense how kind of fired up and passionate I am about making sure that we don't go down the wrong path as a country, because I think as fathers and parents, we have an obligation to be stewards of the future for our children. And we have different opinions on what that future might be. But I think there's a lot of common sense values in the middle that all of us should align with and stop getting played. But I'm loving it, man. It's a lot of work. There's good days and bad days,
Do you feel like you've been able to, because something I wrestle with all the time, or not even wrestle with, it's just an exercise for myself, is I call it like season sinking. And what I mean by that is I know it's my nature to solve my way out of everything. Meaning if I'm not getting the exact amount of time I want to work out, okay, how can I optimize my workout better? How can I sleep more? How can I eat better? All these things constantly trying to solve. And what I've realized is that within this season of life, and that's where the phrase comes from, is that sometimes sinking into it, while still, that doesn't mean either. That doesn't mean I'm busy, so I don't work out anymore. Or I don't eat well anymore. But it's laxing just slightly and observing and giving yourself some like flexibility and kind of just like peace to be like, hey, don't that little voice in your head that's constantly wanting to optimize, be able to turn that on and off, because if you don't, you're never actually like enjoying anything, because it's like you're constantly trying to level up everything. And that's something, having children, and we have our third on the way in a couple weeks, it teaches you very quickly, because as you said, there's just there's a baseline of chaos, and I don't even mean that as a negative, just like of just every minute of my day, I know where I'm going to be. There's not a single second of my day where I don't know what I'm going to be doing. So as you said, it's so easy. If you start to try to optimize your way out of that, or if you're looking at like, oh, 2 years ago, I was in this good a shape eating this way, it's like, you're going to start to resent your current reality. So like for me, being able to sink into that has been an exercise that I've really been trying to work on. And it's like meditating. It's like you never actually really achieve anything, but it's an exercise to keep like just bringing your awareness back to like just a different perspective on life. So long-winded way to ask you, have you felt, now that you have kind of 3.5 years under your belt as a father, have you felt yourself being able to sink in a little more and kind of flow with the chaos?
Yeah, no, you hit the nail on the head. Is I look at it as like, all right, you are at best now running at 80% of the old you before you were a father. Now there's this whole new world where it's like unbelievable, and it's absolutely worth conceding 20% of your optimal. Yep. But one of those is at the gym, right? Like I can't go to the gym for 2 hours anymore on a Saturday and just be like, all right, I have no obligations. I'm just gonna caffeinate extra and do all the accessory work and the long warm up, and those days are over. Sometimes it's 45 minutes, and with my warm up, I'm actually only working out for 20 minutes, right? And it's like lighter weight, and it's so yeah. That holds true for so many other aspects of your life, and I think you're spot on. You have to just accept it, because I think for a while I was mad at myself for not maintaining kind of that standard, and a lot of that is work towards BP. Like I really try not to work after I get home anymore. Now, sometimes if it's something important that I need to get out, I'll put her on the iPad for a minute and just, all right, I gotta get this email because I know it's time sensitive, and then when I have that hour in the morning, I'm usually doing emails and stuff. So it's not like I'm slacking. Whereas the old me, I mean, you probably know, like I was so motivated to kind of stand up this business that was nothing, that like I would work till midnight and it didn't bother me at all. That was me running optimal, even though probably wasn't sustainable. So when I'm not able to do that anymore, I feel like I'm almost like, hey, you lost the edge, man. Like you lost the eye of the tiger. You used to be up at midnight and then you're up at 5:30. You didn't give a shit. You know what I mean? And then you'd go hammer a workout, crush your soul, and you're right back in the seat doing it. And while you're active duty and traveling around the country, and now I'm like, man, I'm smoked and it's 6 p.m. You know what I mean? I just want to have a glass of wine and like color with my daughter. You know what I mean? Like, what has happened to you, man?